Think beans and rice are boring? Think again. We're turning these pantry staples into some delicious meals that are big on flavor and easy on the wallet. Stay tuned for some deliciousness you won't want to miss. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Empty Pantry. I'm Amy and I'm here to help you turn your tight budget into delicious meals. If you've ever wondered what you can do with beans and rice besides make a last resort meal, but rather something delicious, then you're in the right place. I'll show you how to take these two pantry staples and turn them into some tasty, delicious meals that will have your taste buds doing a happy dance. And the best part, they're very budget friendly, so your wallet's going to be doing the happy dance too. So if you're ready to cook up some budget friendly magic in the kitchen, go grab your rice, go grab your beans, and let's get cooking.
First, we'll be making a Mexican rice and bean dish that can easily be made into a main. Then we'll make a Spanish-inspired shrimp and sausage rice dish, followed by some bean and rice patties. These are so yummy. Okay, first let's make a Mexican rice and bean skillet dinner. So I'm going to start by making some rice. I feel like it makes it go faster. So 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of water in the rice cooker or on the stove, whatever you have. And then as that's going, we're going to start cooking some of the other pieces. So we're going to do 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a large skillet. Make sure it's large because you're going to put a lot of stuff in here and you need to be able to move it around. So we're going to get that nice and heated up. And to that, we're going to add about half of a small onion that I have diced fairly small, not super small, but fairly small. I'm also going to add in 1 bell pepper diced. It could be any color or combination of colors. It doesn't matter. This adds a sweetness. It also adds a brightness to the meal. And then once I have that in, I'm going to add 1 clove of garlic. I'm just going to let this cook a little bit. I'm waiting for my garlic to get fragrant, the bell pepper and the onion just to soften just a little bit. And so it takes, 4 or 5 minutes to get it to that point before we move on to the rest of our ingredients. So once you have it cooked down a little bit, you'll smell the garlic. We're going to add in our seasoning. So we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of chili powder, followed by 1 teaspoon of cumin. I just love cumin. It adds such a nice earthy flavor to meals. And then 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. If you just have regular paprika, that will work as well. Now I'm going to add in 1 can of Rotel tomatoes with the juice in there. And I'm going to stir that around. I want the seasoning to be mixed over all of the ingredients that I have in the pan. As we add more ingredients and this gets more full, it's going to be harder to stir and distribute the seasonings. So make sure that you're really getting the seasonings all throughout all the vegetables that we're cooking in this pan. We want it to be as even as possible. Now we're ready to add our cooked rice back into the pan. So hopefully your rice is done. And we're just going to gently pour that into the vegetables. We're going to want to make sure that that pan was big enough for all of this. You can see how it's really starting to bulk up. Once I have my rice in there and I've kind of stirred it in, I'm going to also add 1 can of black beans or 1 cup of black beans if you made them from dried beans. We're just going to gently turn that into the rice. We don't want to be too aggressive with this because we're not trying to break up those beans. We're not looking for a smashed bean. So just kind of gently stir it around with the rice and the vegetables. Now, if you have it on hand or if you add some ground cooked hamburger to this, that is really good. It adds some extra protein to the meal and you have all those beans and rice. So you're still going to have full bellies, but if you do have some meat, throw it in there. You can also add some cheese and cilantro in there is super delicious. You can serve this with sour cream, salsa, maybe guacamole if you're into that. These also makes really good bean and rice burritos the next day. It's a great burrito filling. So there we have our Mexican bean and rice skillet dinner. Now we'll make a Spanish-inspired shrimp, sausage, and rice dish. So on the stove over medium heat, we're going to take a very large pot. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we're going to let that olive oil get a little bit warm. It's not going to hurt if you do it cold, but let's get it a little bit warm. And then to that, we're going to add some onions. So this is about 1 medium onion that I have diced. Okay, we also definitely need some garlic in here. So we're going to add in about 3 cloves of garlic that have been minced up very fine, and then 2 stalks of celery that have been chopped up. We're going to add that in there. And so those are our base vegetables that we have in the bottom. So we're just going to give that a quick stir. We're looking to get those vegetables translucent, not browned, because that garlic is in there, it could burn. So once the onions become translucent, we're going to add in our meat. So I have half a pound of shrimp. If you want to stretch that shrimp, just chop it up a little bit so it's smaller bits. And then we also added in 2 sausage links. These were the links that the size of like a single serving, like a hot dog size. So 2 of those. If you did a large link, I would say that would be the equivalent to probably 2/3 of the large length, the ones that come in like the horseshoe shape. So I'm going to cook those just a little bit. I don't want my shrimp to overcook too much, so it's not completely cooked at this point, before I add in my tomatoes. So 14.5 ounces of diced tomatoes with the juice. We're just going to pour that right in there. And then we're going to start adding in our seasoning. So 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. You can use regular paprika if you like. And then we also need to get some more of like a Cajun flavor in here. And so I'm going to add just a couple pinches of a Cajun seasoning. This adds a really nice flavor and it's really helpful. This is kind of a fun thing to have on hand. So just a couple of pinches of Cajun seasoning. Now you can add your pepper in if you like at this point. I always do it at the very, very end. We still have to add chicken broth. That's going to add a salt to this, so don't put salt in it at this point. We don't want to be taste testing it quite yet. So I gave that a little stir. It's still very nice and warm. I'm going to add in 2 cups of raw, uncooked rice. And then obviously we need some liquid for that rice to absorb so it's not crunchy. That would be totally gross. So we're going to add in 32 ounces of chicken stock, just right in there. And then we need to let this simmer to get that rice cooked. We're looking for the rice to absorb the liquid. If you need to add more liquid, the rice is still crunchy and you're out of liquid, just add a little bit of water at a time. You don't want too much, otherwise you'll just kind of end up with mush. So I would say like a 1/4 cup, maybe 1/2 cup of water to just get it to the rice not being crunchy. I didn't have to add any extra. Kind of just depends, I think, on exactly the rice you use of how much you're going to have to add, if anything. And after you let it simmer for a little bit, just go ahead and take that lid off and give it a nice stir. You can see that my rice is nice and done. All those other ingredients are nice incorporated in there. And there we have our Spanish-inspired shrimp, sausage, and rice dish. This is super good. It's really good the next day because the seasonings have had a chance to sit even more. So it's really good the next day. Makes great leftovers for lunch. Okay, finally, let's make those bean and rice patties. These are so good and they freeze really well. So if you make a big batch, you can freeze the extra. So first off, we need to make some rice. So for this recipe, I'm going to do 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. I am using my rice cooker. You can do it on the stove, just like all the other recipes. I love the rice cooker because I just set it and forget it and I move on to other things and then it's perfect rice every time. It's awesome. And it was super cheap to buy this rice cooker. So now that we have our rice going, we're going to let that cook for a little bit before we start our next step, because the rest of it will go fairly fast. So once the rice is done or almost done, we're going to pull out a very large bowl. We're going to add 2 eggs in here. And then we're going to we want to scramble this up just a little bit so they're not whole before we add the rest of our ingredients. So give those a quick stir. Okay, so my rice is done. I've let it cool off a little bit at this point. It's still hot. You'll see in a second. But you'll put your rice in here. If it is way too hot, it's just going to cook that egg. So hopefully let it cool off a little bit more than I did. I didn't have a problem, but ideally I would have let it cool off just a little bit. Now I'm going to stir this around so that the egg is coating the rice. This is going to help my little patties stick together. Now that I have that incorporated, I'm going to add in some onion. So I'm going to add in half a cup of very finely minced white onion, and then half a cup of minced cilantro. And then obviously we need some seasoning. So I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of cumin. Just like the other recipe, this adds a real earthiness to it. It's such a great flavor. So 2 teaspoons of cumin, and then 1 teaspoon of salt. Just this is regular, just table salt. And then a few dashes of black pepper, just depending on how much you like pepper. I just did a few dashes of black pepper. So one thing when you're making a veggie patty or a bean patty or something is you need binders. So we have the egg in there. The rice is fairly sticky, depending on what kind of rice you use. It'll be sticky or not. Brown rice is really good in this recipe as well. But we're also going to add in some breadcrumbs. So this is going to add an extra binding agent to our patties. So half a cup of breadcrumbs go in there. And then we need to get our black beans in there. So I have 1 can or 1 cup of rinsed and drained black beans. Once I have my beans in there, once again, I don't want to mush them. So I'm just going to gently incorporate the beans into my mixture. Now that everything's well incorporated and mixed together, I need to make the patties. So we're going to do this however you would make a hamburger patty. I'm going to use this mold. It makes them nice and symmetrical and kind of pretty. They do make kind of big patties this way though, but this is what I'm using. I sprayed it with some cooking spray so it wouldn't stick to the mold. If you're using your hands, you might want to use your hands wet so they don't really stick to your hands. Or you could also rub your hands with like a butter or like a shortening just so they don't stick, because this is sticky, especially with the rice. It's really sticky. So I'm going to put I had 2 ice cream scoops worth of filling, and then I'm just going to press that down really good. You really want to try to get it to hold together well. So give it a really nice firm press, or with your hands, make sure that it's really nice and firmly pressed in. I'm going to make all of my patties, and then I need to get them frying. So I'm going to take a very large skillet, and then I'm going to add a generous amount of oil. So we're looking to fry these. So we want a good amount of oil. We don't want them to stick to the bottom. We also need that oil to kind of penetrate up into the patty to make sure that it's thoroughly warmed. So you're using like a 1/4 cup of oil. I guess it depends on how big your pan is, but a generous amount of cooking oil in the bottom of the pan. Now I'm going to cook these in batches because I can't fit them all in one pan. So once the oil is hot, I'm going to very gently lay them into the bottom of the pan. We don't want them falling apart. They want to stick together, but they will fall apart if you're too rough with them. So very gently lay them in the pan, and we're just going to get them to start browning on the bottom. So we're going to let them sit and cook for about 4 minutes on one side before we try to turn them over. We're looking for them to look like a hamburger. So we want them nice and brown on both sides. And once they are nice and brown on both sides, we're going to pull them out of the pan and let them sit on a paper towel, a plate with a paper towel, to get a little bit of the extra oil off of it before serving it. And we're going to serve it just like a hamburger. So whatever you like on your hamburger, we do it just like we would a normal hamburger. And then I made some homemade fries with it, and it was absolutely delicious. Definitely one of the family favorites.
And there you have it, beans and rice like you've never seen before. Well, maybe you have, but these are delicious recipes, and I'm curious which one you're going to try next. Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I have lots more recipes to share with you. So until next time, happy cooking. Bye.